All right. What is going on? Happy Monday morning. It is a beautiful day today. As you can see here, if you're watching the video version of this, if you're watching this on YouTube or any video platform that we're available on here, you can see it's a gorgeous day outside. It's super bright and sunny out. It is Saturday as I record this, but it's Monday morning as this drops. And it's crazy times. Super crazy, actually. I feel like everybody is sitting here just wondering and asking a bunch of different questions. You know, there's drones in the sky. There's, wildfires going on. There's all these different, we're getting today. I think Monday is the day that Donald Trump gets inaugurated. So there's going to be maybe some drama around that. I'm anticipating. Maybe that'll age well, maybe it won't, but who knows? Like, it could be we'll see what happens with that. There's talks of ceasefire in the Middle East, in Gaza. There's all these different fucking things going on. Like, it's a good time to start asking some questions. And so a lot of times in the world, we're looking for, like, if you're like uninformed like I am, and you're just kind of like sitting here asking questions, like you don't really understand what's going on sometimes, or maybe you kind of start to think you do, and then you hear another different person's point of view or perspective, and you're like, oh, maybe I was wrong about that. Maybe I could have been wrong, and maybe I could, there's all these different things. I always, something happens and there's like drones in the sky, and then someone's like, oh, it's aliens, it's UFOs. I'm like, oh, maybe it could be, maybe this could be it. Maybe this is actually something like a sign of something like that. And then there's like all these other things where it's like, oh no, like this actually could be some technology that maybe we're trying to hide from China, or maybe this is kind of so, and there's all these different questions going on. And, even, it's very, it's very normal. It's very kind of, I guess, typical to start to ask questions and start to look for answers, start to think like, what's this? What's that? What's going on? And sometimes the question is more of like, what should I do? Oh, sorry, I didn't even do an intro, but welcome to the Risen Fallen podcast, by the way. But we loosely kind of talk about mental health and self-development, and sometimes I just kind of go on these rants. But I swear there's a reason why I brought this up, and I'll try and go full circle with this. But, it's so easy to ask these questions of like, what's going on? What's going? Yeah, that's why I went down this thought pattern, because, a lot of the times in life, this actually applies to life as well. That's kind of the way I was thinking about it today. It's like, this actually applies to life as well, because, there's times, maybe in jiu-jitsu where somebody's asking like, oh, should I be pushing into my opponent, or should I be like kind of like pulling away from them? Like, should I be doing this or should I be doing that? Or in like carpentry and construction, there's always kind of like, how accurate does my cut have to be? Like, how close is close enough? And sometimes, if you're trying to change your nutrition up, you go like, how many calories should I be eating in a day? How many meals a day should I be eating? There's all these different questions you can be asking. And for a lot of these questions, there's a lot of people out there that will sit there and break down. Maybe you're one of these people. You thought of a specific answer right away. You thought of like, oh, you should do this or you should do that. And for those people, that's one way to look at it, I guess. But the other side of it is like, to all those questions, for a lot of people that are very knowledgeable about those topics, they probably thought like, well, it depends. Like, I actually kind of need more details to give you an answer. Because when you're talking about like, in sport, like, it kind of like, should I do this or should I do that? It's like, well, it kind of depends. Like, what's your opponent doing? What's your objective? What are you trying to do? And, in carpentry, it's the exact same thing. It's like how close is close enough? How precise do I have to be with a cut? Like, is it to the nearest foot? Is it to the nearest like 1/16 of an inch? And it's like, well, it depends. What are you building? Which cut are you making? What do you, what's the purpose of your action? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And yeah, with nutrition, it's the exact same thing. Like, it's like, well, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to gain weight? Are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to change the composition of that weight? Are you trying to re-energize for a long distance event? Are you trying to like just blast yourself for a short sprint? Like, or are you doing this? Are you trying to do that? What's your history like? Like, there's all these different, and so I think that a lot of the time we're looking for, concrete black and white answers in a very like gray, nuanced world. I'm not saying gray as if like this isn't a beautiful, like as I look outside right now, I see all these beautiful different colors. It's like super sunny and gorgeous. And so, like, I'm not trying to say like it's a gray world that way. I mean, like, it's not always like black or white. Like, it's not always like, and I'm a very objective person. Like, I think like in terms of like, how I think, I think a lot of people will even say this about themselves. So maybe this is a dumb fucking thing to say, but I feel like I have a very practical brain, like a very like, objective brain. But even like for someone like me, like you got to admit, this is kind of like a nuanced, like gray world more than it is like an objective black or white kind of thing. And so I think like a lot of the times when we're sitting there asking questions of like, should I do this? Should I do that? Or blah, 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 like all these different things. I think a lot of the times, we're thinking about what's the next step? Like, where am I going to go from here? Right? And it's because we have this idea of like a destination in mind. Like, say, like you have like you have like a goal, you have like a dream, an aspiration, to something that you want to achieve in life. And so like you kind of think, oh, like what's my next step to get there? But I think a lot of us as well, like when you sit and reflect, you kind of have to realize like to know, okay, like I know where I want to go, and I'm wondering what my next step to get there is. Well, obviously, if you need to know what the next step is, then you need to know where you are right now. Like, which direction do I need to go from where I am to get to the next place? And so a lot of the times we're asking questions about like, what's the next step? But we're not actually realizing where we are right now. Like asking the more of the, like a question of like understanding instead of asking the question to understand what the next step is. Like, I think a lot of the times we should be asking ourselves the next, the questions that we should be asking is like, how can I better understand my current circumstances? Like maybe like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What events led me to get here? What mistakes have I made? What can I learn from? What have I done right along the way? What can I repeat? And I think that a lot of the time we're so focused on, we get so tunnel vision on one thing of like, we're wondering like, what can I do this way? What can I do that? And I think that a lot of the time we're looking for such a concrete answer. Like, for example, like obviously, if you're doing a sport, you have a coach. If you're working in construction, you have a foreman, you have a boss. If you're, playing around with your nutrition, maybe you're asking an online community, maybe you're asking a coach, maybe you're asking a nutritionist, which obviously probably the safer ways to do it. Like playing around with that type of thing, obviously what that entails is like talking to other people about it and asking them the questions. And so understanding that there's nuance to that as well. There's obviously like pros and cons to always gravitating towards other people and always asking questions and always, I think that, I guess there's not really like asking too many questions as long as there's some action behind it. But I think that a lot of the times we think like, oh, I can just offload like it almost gives us an excuse of like, you can offload the blame or the ownership of the result if it's a bad result. You're like, oh, well, I asked so-and-so and they fucking told me to do it this way. And so I did it that way. And that's why this is the result. And so it's kind of like a way to offload the responsibility sometimes, I think. And so that's why sometimes I think by default, people will just try and offload their problems that way. And I think it doesn't take much analysis of that to understand like, well, you still chose to do it, right? And so that's kind of your responsibility. But understanding like sometimes the people that we ask for advice or like, hey, should I do this? Should I do that? Sometimes it's good shit. Like sometimes you can learn from their mistakes. You can learn from their past experiences, whether it be good or bad, and then not have to repeat the bad things and maybe get a little bit more of the good things. But sometimes they might have different dreams, different goals, different aspirations. They might have different things that happen in their past that make them view, different situations properly. And so their idea of success or what they might think you want is different than your concept of success. And so their advice may actually guide you in the wrong way. And so that's why I think it's so important to really focus on like kind of asking more questions about understanding what your current situation and circumstances are, and asking these questions of yourself and think about like, where am I right now? Why am I in this situation? What's going on? What am I doing? Why am I doing that thing? And like, what am I feeling right now? What's really going on deep down inside me? And so like, I think instead of asking and offloading these problems and questions to other people and thinking like, what can I do next? We can actually ask these questions of ourselves and think like, what's my circumstance right now? And how can I better understand that so that I can, I feel like a lot of the time deep down inside, we know what the next step is. And the reason that we're kind of like procrastinating or waiting for answers from other people or waiting for other people to act on our behalves is because then, like I said, that offloads the responsibility of like, well, I'm waiting for what they have to say. I'm waiting for what they're going to do. I'm waiting for them to do this. So I can't do that. And it's kind of just like I said, a way to kind of offload that responsibility. And so I think a lot of the times, if you're asking questions about like, what should I do next? Or what can I do right now? Or what should I do? Or any of these questions, the answer is obviously just going to be, it depends. And then if you're like, hey, what the fuck do you mean by it depends? Then you're like, oh, well, I'm going to need more details before I can answer that question. Like I'm going to need to think about, like I said, more questions to better understand the current circumstances as opposed to just trying to move to the next thing, because you can't get like a direction to go in to get closer to where you want to go if you don't actually understand where you are right now. If someone's like, which direction should I go? Should I go north, south, east, west? Should I turn left or should I turn right? And it's like, well, I'm trying to get to the mall. Should I turn left or should I turn right? And it's like, well, where are you? Does that kind of concept make sense? Anyways, just kind of a fucking quick episode to just change maybe like a perspective, or I don't know. It was just something that was on my mind of like, just all the time I was just hearing people kind of ask questions, and I would think in my head, like, it kind of depends. Like it kind of, and I was like, why do I always think that? Like, well, and why do we always ask these questions that always result in the answer of like, it depends? And it just led me to kind of think about like this, there's like this kind of, looking for like a concrete answer, like looking for a foundation, like an ideal, like the foundation of an idea. And this weird kind of discomfort we all have with nuance, because like, even like, as much as we know, when you ask the question of like, should this or should I do that or whatever, and then someone's like, it depends, you're kind of just like, what the fuck? Like, it's kind of just like an uncomfortable, what do you mean it depends? Like, oh, I'm going to have to recognize these circumstances by myself and make the decision myself. And yeah, that's pretty much the answer. And so, I don't know. It's just, if I just had to kind of summarize that, it's just kind of like, reflect on, I guess, how we can better understand our current circumstances, and in the areas of our lives, like where we always search for black and white answers, like where do we have this kind of uncomfortability with nuance, and maybe practice, asking yourself these questions, not of like, what should I do next, or what can I do next, or where should I go from here, but like more about, where am I right now and how did I end up here, and how do I feel about that? And what feelings led me here? What was I listening to? Was I listening to these kind of thoughts in my head? Was I listening to these other people because they agreed with this kind of side of my ego of trying to keep me safe and trying to keep me comfortable? Or is this a result of, something else? Is this, and without asking these questions, how are we going to understand? How are we going to know? And maybe I'm just kind of talking in circles here. So on the note, maybe that's a great place to wrap this up. Kind of a weirder episode today, I think. This is kind of one of the more abstract thoughts that I've had recently. And so just we're figuring it out together. And so on that note, I think that's a beautiful place to wrap this up. I will see you guys next Monday. And much love. Peace out. Love you all. Bye.